Hello my lovelies, my name is Stephanie and welcome back or welcome to my channel. I am a trans YouTuber who talks about all things gender identity, trans existence, LGBTQ plus advocacy and all of that fun stuff. And in celebration and kind of there's a word I'm looking for, it's a very specific word. Acknowledgement of the fact that Friday the 14th of July was Non-Binary Persons Day, an internationally celebrated day celebrating all people who identify as being non-binary or outside of the specific westernized and very much dictated to binary ideologies of gender identity. It was in fact Non-Binary Persons Day on Friday the 14th of July 2023, and in celebration and recognition and acknowledgement and all of those things, I thought that today we could talk all things non-binary. So just a disclaimer and just to premise this video, I am not a non-binary person. I do not live a non-binary existence. I have never lived a non-binary existence. That is not to say that at some point I will not explore beyond the binary genders, but I am not and have never identified as being a non-binary person. So I do have a handy dandy little definition just for all of you folks, because although I do feel it's important to talk about these subjects, I like to pull from other people's research before discussing them. So non-binary is used to describe people who feel their gender cannot be defined within the margins of the gender binary. Instead, they understand their gender in a way that goes beyond simply identifying as either male or female. Some non-binary people may feel comfortable within the trans community and trans umbrella and find this is a safe space to be with others who don't identify as cisgendered. But this isn't always the case. So that is the definition of non-binary from the LGBTQ plus Foundation, which I will link just below in the description of this video. And the reason I wanted to make this video is because obviously, here's the thing, I don't speak French, but I still know that it exists and I still have a huge amount of respect for people who can speak and understand it. And I am very similar minded when it comes to people who are non-binary. I, as a trans woman, very clearly jumped between the binaries. I went from being male, boy identifying, boy presenting, to woman identifying, woman presenting, female presenting. And so for myself, I never existed between the two binaries. And the way I've always looked at it as a trans person is you have the two genders, male and female, as kind of the bookends, as you like it, as the two binaries in westernized medicine. And then in between, you've got the whole library, the whole catalogue of all of the different gender identities and diversities and intersexualities and things like that that exist within the grey area of gender identity and sexual identity. And for me, non-binary really can be anywhere on that spectrum. It can be anything from gender fluid up to, you know, intersexuality, anything. So for myself, as a trans person looking into the non-binary community, and obviously being an ally to my non-binary family as well, I very much view male and female as the bookends, and then gender diversity, transition, non-binary as being that in between, that beautiful catalogue of different information. And so I think what's really interesting is kind of discussing it as someone who doesn't necessarily understand it, because there's a way in which we can understand other people's, sorry, my hair is really bothering me because it's very warm in here, so I'm just gonna tuck it behind me. There's a way in which we can talk about other people's lived experiences without discrediting them. You know, there are several things that I may not understand, but I still believe in and know is real and respect, and I still really struggle with the concept that people can't respect other people's gender identities and spectrums and things like that. I personally have several members of the I personally have several members of the non-binary community who I call close friends and family members. And so for me, it was just really important to make a video talking about what it means to be non-binary. And then in terms of fitting within the trans community, there are two different sectionalities of being non-binary, and one of those is trans non-binary. Well, there are many different ways to be non-binary, actually. So there are many different ways to be non-binary, and non-binary presentation and all of those things, outward presentation. There is no right way to be non-binary. However, one subsection of just general kind of genderless expression is being trans non-binary and fitting within the umbrella of what it means to be a trans person, because being trans is an umbrella term that covers all things from transgender to transsexual to non-binary. There's intersexuality in that, there's all sorts going on in there. And so for myself, it's really interesting to know that I have one of my close friends who identifies as trans non-binary and exists underneath the trans umbrella, and then I have about 4 that don't go with the word trans. They think of themselves as queer or just non-binary and things like that. And we're seeing at the moment in society this idea that we obviously have these two kind of binary bookends, and then we have all of this kind of this beautiful grey area in the middle, and we're seeing things like passport markers coming up. Now, I don't think that there should be an NB passport marker. I think it should just be like an unidentified or an undisclosed, like a little U. And I know a lot of places are adopting the U because I think it's just a better way to go, to be honest. I think it's just a much better way to go. But so for myself, I think it was just really important to kind of talk about the fact that I used to be quite, not against a non-binary identity, but I used to understand it from a mental headspace of not wanting to find out more about what it meant to be a non-binary person. And through the years of my own kind of relationship with gender, because for many years, if you've been following the channel for a while, you will know that I wasn't as comfortable disclosing my gender identity and my transness. And so for me, I used to really struggle with the concept of being non-binary and existing outside of those binaries, because like I say, I jumped from male binary to female binary presenting. And although my sexual identity may exist within that beautiful grey area, my physical presentation just went from masc to femme. And that seems to be this really palatable way for people to transition and not upset society as much. I mean, don't get me wrong, society still hates me, but like not as much as if I was existing within that grey area in terms of my presentation. But the thing is, my gender identity, my sexual identity is still within that grey area, because I've made videos before that say I don't identify as being biologically female. And so non-binary for me really is just one subsection of that kind of really beautiful in-between and that flux of gender identity. And I just wanted to make a video because, one, I wanted to share with some of you who might not know that the 14th of July is Non-Binary Persons Day around the world. Two, I wanted to share a description of what it means for some of you who, like me, might be trans and might be transitioning between the binaries and might not know anything about what it means to exist between those two things. And three, just because I think it's so valuable to talk about being non-binary on the internet, regardless of who's saying it. Now, like I said in the beginning, I'm not a non-binary person. I've never identified as being non-binary. For years, I didn't understand it as a gender identity, as an expression. There's no wrong or right way to be non-binary, but it was really important for me to sit down and be like, this is Non-Binary Persons Day, this is us acknowledging it, this is us showing allyship to our community, this is what it means, this is how we celebrate it. And so to all of my non-binary siblings and allies out there, I hope you had an amazing Non-Binary Persons Day. I hope you found this very random and slightly waffly video less informative and more fun, because I doubt it was particularly informative, because I'm not. Yeah. So I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're avoiding transphobia. I hope you're celebrating your non-binary siblings and allies and friends and family members. And I will see you next week for another video. Bye.